Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome to this YouTube channel again on all things narcissism. And again, a lot of the ideas now are really coming up from interesting sources, conversations I'm having, feedback I'm getting from people, and your crowdsourced ideas. Always welcome that. You can drop them in the comment section here because a lot of these suggestions are actually shaping into the research I do on these videos before we put them out. So today's an interesting one. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the issues that get raised when a narcissist is actually really, really competent and good at their job. Yeah, they can often be fantastic at what they do. Before I get to that, please always subscribe to this channel if you're interested in this content. But let's talk about this. Sometimes a narcissist is on it. They're actually really competent, and we got to own it. It's an interesting topic that came to me in the last few weeks that came out of some non-clinical conversations I've been having with friends and colleagues recently. All of them were talking about friends and about workplace issues. And the main theme that came out of these conversations is, how do you manage a narcissist who's actually really, really smart and really good at their job? You're like, oh, they're toxic, but my gosh, they really know how to get this done. Now, these conversations I was having was interesting. They spanned many different occupations: teaching, education, academia, medicine, law, media, entertainment, business, athletics, you name it. And in all cases, the most toxic person in the workplace they were talking about was also someone who had the proverbial goods, like they were good. And they brought up some real challenges where you had to find this balance between grudgingly acknowledging their excellence and perhaps even the necessity of this person, but then endure their toxicity. So what do you do? Because this is a tough one. It's actually one I've endured too, and I'm like, this is a tough one. Narcissism, interestingly, narcissism and real excellence at a specific skill can be associated more often than you think. And this is often because people with these personality styles are able to get so singularly laser focused onto one thing that they're able to do that one thing with almost like this unbelievable, again, focus to the negligence of everything else, typically including other people. Now, all the rest of us who do have a fair amount of empathy, we slow ourselves down a bit because we do actually attend to other people, talk to other people. But narcissists are willing to make life as comfortable for themselves as they can. They'll go all in because this is what they want to do, and they'll pull the long hours and they'll make tremendous demands on other people. And many times, narcissists bring this kind of focus because they desperately want to succeed, and they derive their validation from being the best at something. And perhaps over their life, they've been so smart that they kept getting sort of rewarded for that and validated. As a result, they will often minimize and criticize those they feel aren't working as hard as them, and come up with comments like, hey, lunch is for suckers, and 5 p.m. is when my work day begins, and things like that. And yeah, this assiduous, unyielding focus can often result in excellence in everything, because they bring that to everything. But because they rarely step back to review the body count that their insensitivity can often generate, they just keep pushing. And I actually do believe you can focus on personal excellence and performance while also being an empathic leader or an empathic human being. But that requires empathy in the first place. It is for this reason that many times people miss the narcissism in a person who's really excellent or really smart. Many people are vulnerable to excuse somebody else's lack of empathy and their entitlement and their grandiosity and their arrogance and their validation seeking and their contempt, because they say, well, that person really is smart and they do have the goods, or I guess they're excellent, so they're just demanding excellence. And then everyone who does that, we're really just excusing and enabling their toxic behavior as well, on the basis that somehow their intelligence or their excellence or their success is a free pass to be able to treat other people badly. So then this behavior gets enabled even more. There is also what I've talked about in the past. It's something I call the golden goose paradox, whereby people don't want to aggravate, lose, or otherwise ruffle the golden goose who is bringing in the awards, the notoriety, and the money. So the narcissist gets enabled even more. The toxic culture sustains. And when people are so dazed from the abuse down the road, from living or working in a situation like this, they wonder why they didn't see it. Well, they didn't see it because they were so dazzled by how smart this person is. Being smart is not a virtue, it's a skill. Being excellent at something is not a virtue, it's a skill. And yeah, okay, they're good skills. Listen, I'm all about the smart, I like it. But they may not always connect. Those skills, smart and excellent, may not always connect to being a decent human being. A major mistake we make in our culture is to view success as a free pass to behave any way you want. And that mentality has gotten so many people sucked into toxic relationships, to have toxic family systems that are hyper-enabled. And this has also destroyed careers and, frankly, companies. Narcissists are also willing to break the rules to get things done. And that gets things done, which looks like excellence. They will manipulate anyone and anything to get results. They will break any rule they want, and then they will justify it as necessary to get their important job done or to make their important contribution to humanity. They are willing to throw people under the bus and will then write that off. They're throwing them under the bus as someone who maybe just lacked the mental toughness to work with them, or that's just the cost of doing business. Listen, we do know, and it's painful to acknowledge, but we know that some very important contributions have been made by some very toxic people in history. Things that we likely use and interact with every day. But the narcissistic and toxic people are masters at justification. And they'll say, listen, so what if I'm an asshole? I'm really good at what I do and I get the job done. And since most people let them get away with that, then that mindset persists. And so too does the toxic culture. And let's face it, their other reason for their success is their obsession with winning. They have to win above all else. It is essential for their survival, like a shark needing to eat. They have to win. Now, while most of us like to win, it's not entirely our ego, our heart, and our life. It's nice to win, but we may see other things that are more important, or at least have a balanced perspective and can let it go. Not for the toxic folks out there. It is only about the win, and they will say, do, or act in any way to get the win. They will steal, they will plagiarize, they will lie, but they got to get the win. It's as though they would cease to exist if they didn't win. So that win mentality in a culture that is obsessed already with winning sets them up pretty well, especially already if they're really good at what they do, which they probably are if they keep winning. And they push everyone out of the way to get to the winner's circle. The winning is a hedge against the insecurity. If they win, they are able to maintain a defensive fortress, protecting their insecurity. So that winning is completely all-consuming for them. The narcissist is the one who will push folks out of the way to be the first one to get on the lifeboat. But in the rare times the narcissist lets other people perhaps go first into the lifeboat, then it is often with the goal of getting validation for being a hero. Like, here, let me lift you on the lifeboat and make sure somebody's taking my picture. And they still will make sure they get themselves on that lifeboat and ensure that someone gets them a picture of them, saving everybody else. It gets very difficult to get corporations or organizations or institutions to care too much about narcissistic abuse. Because I sometimes wonder if the dirty little secret is that they do not want to lose their pool of excellence. In that way, the rest of us, the rank and file, the empathic ones who kind of put up with it and kind of march through the best we can, then we become the sacrificial lambs. If you keep the big talent happy, well, everyone else is replaceable. And it's why you may have found yourself or watched other people trying to wage futile wars with human resource departments or even in court. And in more cases than not, nothing was done. The narcissist maybe got a little slap on the hand, maybe not. But more often than not, you saw they were protected by the company, the leadership, and whatever other enablers made up that place. Where it gets to be tricky is when people don't want to see it. Some of you, and I think all of us have probably had this experience. There are people out there who are vulnerable at some point in their career and their lives to work with the toxic person because they want to be at the center of the right company or the right university or the right project or get the right investor. In those cases, if you knew that going in, then that's on you. Because if you've learned only one thing from watching anything on this channel, people with these personality styles are not going to change. So that's a brutal piece of acceptance that you would need to swallow. But don't go in naive. If you do have to throw yourself into one of these toxic situations, remember, you're not going to be the exception. They will destroy you too. It would be like thinking, I'm the one trash bag in the box that's not going to get thrown into the trash. Good luck with that. Many people think, oh, I get it. I get how these difficult folks work. Maybe. But to really make it work, to work with that ultra smart, ultra successful narcissist, it is radical, radical acceptance. It's constructing a suit of armor for yourself that ends you up always having to not personalize what they say or do. You almost have to become a robot of sort, enacting their orders, trying to learn as much as you can, being enough of a sycophant or a butt kisser to survive, but not really inhabiting that identity. Nietzsche nailed it when he said, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he does not become a monster. There is a risk that you start soaking up some of the poison of the process of working with one of these really smart, really successful narcissists. Is the lesson worth it? Again, it requires a very specific form of compartmentalization to be able to leave all of that behind. And since narcissists have such terrible boundaries, having a normal life while working under such conditions is quite impossible. You can set a clock by the fact that there will be 10 a.m. calls and Sunday mornings in the office and 24/7 boundary violations. There is also the risk that comes from this because their success and excellence of many narcissists who are really competent can be quite alluring. Many people will say they were drawn to their narcissist initially and continue to excuse their narcissist or stayed with their narcissist because of their brilliance or success. There is the assumption that with these traits other good things would come, and they didn't. There's also the societal pressure that, aren't you lucky to have found a partner who's so wise and smart and successful? Ask anyone who has been in a relationship with someone very smart and successful who's also toxic. It is often a rocky road, a balancing act of somebody who's a workaholic, a partner who gets almost all of their validation from their work, their performance, their coworkers, and being idolized at work, a compartmentalized approach that feels dehumanizing, an unavailability to you as your co-parent for your children together, or this might have even been your own parent, and a general sense of detachment they may have in your relationship that is made worse because the world is applauding your smart, successful, competent, narcissistic partner all the time. You're the person who attends their award ceremonies and other ceremonies and other whatevers and listens to them talk about it over and over again. And trust me, they're not going to have as much zeal for your life especially if they have contempt or derision for what it is you do, which you can almost count on. Being someone's accessory can get tiresome after a while, especially when your partner is not bringing anything into the relationship with respect to empathy or compassion. But the gaslighting voices of the world saying, "Aren't you lucky to be with someone so successful?" can just double down on the cognitive dissonance that keeps you stuck in this relationship with someone oh so smart. And this cycle could have easily replicated in your family of origin. And I'm sure many of you, that's where you might be seeing this happen to you. If your parent was the so-called genius or brainchild or gifted doctor, lawyer, business person, whatever, you heard how great it was to come from such a great, successful family and have such a smart parent. The same parent who, if they ever did notice you, it was often from a place of devaluation or contempt or simply viewing you as an inconvenience. Success, if you learn about it this way, can start to feel like a very complicated space. And frankly, if you're somebody who's doing hiring, this may really feel like a tough call. You may want the pristine skill set that a toxic person brings, and you may think you can manage them in the workplace. You can't. So if you want smarty toxic person, you have to do the math and the risk behavior analysis on whether it is worth it for you to have someone working with you who is so difficult and toxic. Is it worth what it will do to your company culture, to the psyches of those who work with you or even your clients? And frankly, for you, it's also going to be hard if you're the person who hired them. And honestly, make sure you have a good legal fund set up at your company just in case. If the toxic genius's behavior really gets out of hand and you're dealing with any number of employment lawsuits as a result, you're going to be paying out settlements and dealing with litigation. So yeah, the successful, competent narcissist, and there's a lot of them, the one who is the best, the brightest, the fastest, the smartest. They're dangerous creatures, both in the workplace and in your personal life. It is the most classical example of enabling. They're so smart, they can't be a bad person. And it is often why this spread of toxic behavior we're seeing in the world at large seems to not only be happening more and more, but it's almost being encouraged. If you think you can outsmart these folks' behavior or outwit it, at a minimum, just a warning, you might want to have a good shrink on speed dial to make sure you have places to talk about it. Because no one will, you won't be the one who is going to figure out the workarounds. And if you stay in it long enough, it will bring down your health. And it may even result in you starting to emulate these behaviors, not because you're a narcissist, but in some ways you have to learn a certain form of survivalism. So yeah, this idea that this is so virtuous, yes, narcissists are often really good at what they do. And a lot of people like think, but he's really good at his job. No, I would say it's and. He's narcissistic and he's really good at his job. Those two things can coexist. The trick is it's going to make working with this person very difficult, and all the smart in the world ain't going to lift that toxicity away. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm sure many of you have stories like this. If someone like, oh my gosh, yeah, they are actually really good at their job, but oh my goodness, were they toxic? And after it was all done, you have to ask yourself, was it worth it? Drop a comment. Was it worth it? Bye-bye.